Hello there, and welcome back to Sleeping with Science Stories. Find yourself a comfortable position. Maybe you're lying in bed, your head sinking into a soft pillow, or you're sitting back, letting your body be fully supported. Tonight, we won't be flying far into space. We won't be exploring distant galaxies or stars at the edge of the cosmos. We'll be coming back to our very own home, back to Earth. This small blue planet, quietly spinning in the darkness of space, holds wonders you may have never heard of. There are creatures that can live forever, reverse time, and be reborn. There are forests that whisper to each other through secret underground networks. There are beaches that glow blue and sparkle like galaxies in the dark night. There are tiny creatures that can survive in the vacuum of space. There are trees tens of thousands of years old that are still living. There are animals that change sex, change skin color with their emotions, and even control the minds of other creatures. And all these wonders are happening right here, on Earth, our home. If this is your first time finding this channel, remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next stories. And if this video helps you relax, leave a gentle like as a quiet thank you. We'll begin exploring the wonders of Earth. There are creatures on this earth that make us pause and wonder if what we're seeing is real. Creatures that challenge everything we understand about life, about death, about what can and cannot happen. Let's start with a creature that has an ability most of us only see in fairy tales: the ability to live forever. Somewhere in the ocean, floating along, is a tiny jellyfish with the scientific name Turritopsis dohrnii. People call it the immortal jellyfish. And that name isn't an exaggeration. This jellyfish is only about 4 to 5 millimeters in diameter, smaller than your pinky fingertip. But don't let its tiny size fool you. This creature has an ability that no other known multicellular organism has. It can reverse time. When an adult immortal jellyfish faces stress, perhaps from lack of food, from injury, or from environmental changes, it can do something strange. Instead of dying, it sinks to the ocean floor and begins to transform. The adult jellyfish body slowly breaks down. The cells convert into a different form, and after a few days, where there was once an adult jellyfish, there's now a polyp, the juvenile stage of jellyfish, the first stage in the life cycle. This polyp then develops, grows, and eventually becomes a new adult jellyfish, the same individual, the same creature, but returned to childhood. And this process can repeat itself. Theoretically, infinitely. The immortal jellyfish can live, age, then reverse back to youth, then age, then reverse again forever. Of course, in nature, most immortal jellyfish don't live forever. They get eaten by other animals, get sick, or have accidents. But without those external factors, biologically, they might never die of old age. Think about that. A creature that can reverse the aging process. Not just slow it down, but actually reverse it. Return to youth. And do it multiple times. This isn't science fiction. This is reality happening in our ocean right now. But the immortal jellyfish isn't the only jellyfish with magical abilities. Many common jellyfish also have an amazing talent. the ability to regenerate from fragments. If you cut a jellyfish into many pieces, say in an accident or by a predator, each piece, large enough, can repair itself and develop into a complete new jellyfish. This means one jellyfish can become many jellyfish, not through normal reproduction, but simply by being divided, like how you can propagate some plants by cutting branches, but in an animal, something most other animals cannot do. And this regeneration ability isn't limited to jellyfish. Starfish are perhaps the most famous example of body regeneration. Most people know that starfish can regenerate a lost arm. If a starfish loses an arm, maybe from another animal biting it off, or from cutting it off itself to escape a predator, it can regenerate that arm in a few months. But what fewer people know is that some starfish species can regenerate their entire body from just one arm. If an arm is severed and still has a small piece of the central disc attached to it, that arm can grow itself into a complete new starfish. All the other arms, the central disc, the internal organs, all regenerate from just one piece. This process takes time, maybe a year or longer, but the result is a complete, fully functional starfish from what seemed like just a fragment. And there's another creature with an even more impressive regeneration ability: the planarian flatworm. Planarians are tiny, flat creatures that live mainly in fresh water. They don't look special, just small strips of brown or gray flesh, a few millimeters to a few centimeters long. But their regeneration ability is almost unbelievable. You can cut a planarian into 2 pieces, and each piece will regenerate into a complete worm. You can cut it into 3 pieces, 5 pieces, even 10 pieces, and each piece, if large enough, will regenerate into a complete worm. The head part will regenerate a new tail. The tail part will regenerate a new head, including the brain. The middle part will regenerate both head and tail. And this new brain isn't just a lump of cells. It's a functioning brain with all the necessary neural networks. There's even research showing that regenerated planarians can retain some memories from before they were cut, even though their brain is completely new. This raises deep questions about the nature of memory, of consciousness. If memories can exist when the brain has been destroyed and regenerated, could they be stored somewhere else in the body? We still don't fully understand how this works. But the planarian's regeneration ability is real, proven through hundreds of experiments. Now, let's move to another group of creatures that can survive in conditions that most other life couldn't imagine. Tardigrades, also called water bears, are among the most extraordinary creatures on Earth. They're tiny creatures, usually only about half a millimeter long, with 8 stubby legs and moving slowly like tiny bears. But don't let their cute appearance fool you. Tardigrades are the most resilient creatures known. They can survive in the vacuum of space. Scientists have sent tardigrades into Earth's orbit, exposed them to the vacuum of space for many days, then brought them back. And some of them survived, even reproduced afterward. They can withstand pressure 6,000 times atmospheric pressure at sea level. You can put them under tremendous pressure that would crush most other organisms. And tardigrades are still fine. They can survive extremely cold temperatures, down to minus 272 degrees Celsius, just 1 degree above absolute zero. And they can withstand temperatures up to 150 degrees Celsius, the temperature of boiling water in a pressure cooker. They can live without water for many years, even decades. When the environment dries out, tardigrades curl themselves into a small ball with almost no water in their body and enter a state called cryptobiosis, a state of suspended animation. In this state, their metabolism drops to nearly zero. They don't eat, don't breathe, don't grow. Basically, they freeze time, and they can stay in that state for an astonishingly long time. There are reports of tardigrades being revived after 30 years in a dried state. When exposed to water again, they slowly recover, unfold, and continue living as if nothing happened. They can even withstand radiation at levels that would kill most other organisms. The radiation dose that tardigrades can survive is hundreds of times higher than the lethal dose for humans. How do they do this? Scientists are still studying, but it seems tardigrades have some special protective mechanisms. They produce special proteins that can protect DNA and cellular structures from damage. When dried, they create a type of biological glass that wraps around important molecules, keeping them stable. And if their DNA is still damaged, they have an extremely efficient DNA repair system that can patch up the breaks. Tardigrades are proof of the amazing adaptability of life. They show us that life can exist in conditions we once thought impossible. But tardigrades aren't alone. There are many other creatures that also live in extreme environments. In the Arctic and Antarctic, where seawater can be colder than the normal freezing point, there are fish species that can live in water cold enough that should freeze their blood. These ice fish have a special protein in their blood called antifreeze protein. This protein binds to tiny ice crystals, preventing them from growing. Even when the surrounding water is colder than the freezing point, the fish's blood remains liquid thanks to this miraculous protein. And at the other end of the temperature spectrum, there are bacteria living in hot springs where temperatures can reach 120 degrees Celsius, much hotter than the boiling point of water at normal pressure. These thermophiles and hyperthermophiles have enzymes and proteins designed to function at high temperatures. What would destroy the proteins of most organisms is the optimal condition for them. Some bacteria even live in strong acid, where the pH is so low it would dissolve flesh. Others live in extreme alkaline environments. Some live in salinity many times higher than seawater. And there's a fungus species with an even stranger ability, the ability to control the minds of other creatures. The Ophiocordyceps fungus, commonly called the zombie fungus, infects certain ant species and other insects. When fungal spores contact an ant's body, they germinate and penetrate inside. The fungus grows inside the ant's body, spreading through the tissues. But what's amazing is it doesn't kill the ant immediately. Instead, it seems to control the ant's behavior. The infected ant starts acting strangely. It leaves the nest, goes lower than usual, and eventually climbs onto a plant or grass blade at a specific height and humidity, optimal conditions for the fungus to grow. There, The ant bites down hard on a leaf or branch, locking its jaw onto the plant material. And then it dies. But the fungus continues. It grows in the dead ant's body, and eventually a fungal stalk emerges from the ant's head, releasing spores down to the ground below, where they can infect other ants. This entire process is like a horror movie script, but it's reality happening in rainforests around the world. How the fungus controls the ant's behavior is still not fully understood. It seems to secrete chemicals that affect the ant's brain and nervous system, forcing it to perform actions that serve the fungus's interests, not the ants. And it's not just insects that can freeze and come back to life. Some frog species in cold climates can do the same thing. The Alaskan wood frog survives winter by letting its body freeze. When temperatures drop below freezing, up to 70% of the water in the frog's body turns to ice. The heart stops beating. Breathing stops. The brain shows no measurable activity. By every medical definition, the frog is dead. But when spring comes and temperatures rise, something miraculous happens. The ice in the body gradually melts. The heart starts beating again. The lungs breathe again. And the frog slowly comes back to life. This can happen because wood frogs produce glucose and other compounds that act as natural antifreeze, protecting vital organs and cells from ice damage. And finally, let's talk about creatures that can change the very fundamental nature of their bodies. Some fish species can change sex during their lifetime. Clownfish are born male, but if the only female in the group dies, the largest and most dominant male will transition to female. This process takes a few weeks to a few months. The fish's body changes from the inside. Testes transform into ovaries. Hormones change. And the fish, once male, is now completely female, capable of laying eggs. This sounds strange to us, but for clownfish, it's a sensible survival strategy. In a small group, sex flexibility ensures there's always a breeding pair, no matter what happens. And octopuses have an even more amazing ability. They can edit their own RNA. Most organisms have fixed DNA, genetic code passed from parents that doesn't change throughout life. DNA is transcribed into RNA, and RNA is translated into protein. It's a one-way path. DNA to RNA to protein. But octopuses do something different. They can edit RNA after it's created from DNA. This means they can change the proteins produced without changing the DNA. And they do this with astonishing frequency. Tens of thousands of times in their nervous system. It seems octopuses use this ability to rapidly adapt to temperature changes and other environmental conditions. This is like having an editable copy of the genetic instruction manual, allowing quick changes without waiting for evolution over many generations. And chameleons are famous for their color-changing ability. Most people think they do this for camouflage, but the reality is more complex. Chameleons change color, mainly to communicate and regulate body temperature. Colors reflect their emotional state: fear, excitement, anger, readiness to mate. An angry chameleon might turn red or black. One trying to attract a mate might display brilliant colors. One that's scared might pale or turn brown. They change color by adjusting special cells in the skin called chromatophores, which contain color pigments, and by changing the spacing between nanocrystals in other cells, creating structural color effects. This entire process is controlled by the nervous system and hormones, reflecting the chameleon's internal state outward to the body. All these creatures, the immortal jellyfish reversing time, tardigrades surviving in space, fungi controlling minds, fish changing sex, octopuses editing RNA, chameleons changing color with emotions, all share this planet with us. They remind us that life is more diverse, more miraculous, and more resilient than we could ever imagine. These wonderful creatures are living their lives somewhere on Earth, regenerating, surviving, changing, living reminders of the unbelievable richness of life. When we think about intelligence, we usually think about brains, about the ability to think, plan, solve problems. We think about humans, and perhaps some intelligent animals like chimpanzees or dolphins, but intelligence exists in many different forms on this earth. And some of those forms of intelligence work in ways we're only beginning to understand. Let's start with a place most of us never think about when talking about intelligence. Underground, in the darkness, where tree roots spread. For many decades, we thought trees were solitary organisms, each tree standing alone, competing with other trees for water, light, and nutrients. But it turns out we were wrong. Trees aren't alone. They're connected to each other through a secret underground network. A network some scientists call the Wood Wide Web, a play on the World Wide Web, the global internet. This network is made up of fungi, specifically mycorrhizal fungi, species that live symbiotically with tree roots. Fungal threads, mycelium, spread through the soil, connecting with the roots of many different trees. One tree can be connected to dozens, even hundreds of other trees through this fungal network. And through this network, trees can communicate and share resources. When a tree has excess sugar from photosynthesis, perhaps because it's in a position with lots of light, it can send some of that sugar through the fungal network to other trees lacking light. Old mother trees can nurture young seedlings through this network, but it's not just nutrients that are shared. Information is transmitted too. When a tree is attacked by pests, it can send chemical signals through the fungal network to warn surrounding trees. Trees receiving the warning can start producing defensive chemicals before they're attacked. Imagine that. A tree being eaten by caterpillars sends a message. I'm under attack. Prepare your defenses. And neighboring trees receive that message and act. This isn't intelligence like ours, with consciousness and thought, but it is a form of information processing, a form of communication, a complex biological network that allows trees to coordinate and support each other. And the fungal network isn't completely fair. Some trees, usually the oldest and largest in the forest, function as hubs, hub trees or mother trees. They have more connections and play a crucial role in distributing resources and information. If these hub trees are cut down or die, the entire network can be weakened. A forest isn't just a collection of individual trees. It's a connected system. a superorganism where individuals interact in subtle and complex ways. And tree roots themselves also have a form of intelligence. As roots grow through soil, they must navigate around obstacles, search for water and nutrients, avoid toxic areas. Studies show tree roots can hear the sound of flowing water and grow toward it. They can sense and respond to chemical gradients in the soil, moving toward nutrient sources. Some scientists even argue that root tips function like a distributed brain, root brain, with the ability to process sensory information and make decisions about growth direction. But if you think trees have strange intelligence, consider slime mold. Slime mold is not an animal, not a plant, not a true fungus. It belongs to a group of single-celled organisms called protists, and it has no brain, no nervous system. Basically, just a simple mass of protoplasm that can move and eat. But despite lacking a brain, slime mold can solve complex problems. In a famous experiment, scientists placed slime mold at the entrance of a maze and put food at the exit. The slime mold spread out, explored the maze, and eventually found the shortest path from entrance to food, eliminating all unnecessary branches. It solved the maze, without a brain, without a map, just by spreading out, experimenting, and withdrawing from paths that didn't lead to food. In another experiment, scientists created a map of Japan with oat flakes representing major cities. They placed slime mold at Tokyo's position and let it grow. The slime mold spread out and connected the oat flakes in a way remarkably similar to Japan's actual railway network, a network designed by human engineers over decades to optimize efficiency and cost. How can a single-celled organism without a brain do this? It seems to use simple local rules: grow toward food, shrink inefficient connections, which when applied across the entire organism create intelligent solutions at the overall level. This is a form of distributed intelligence, emerging from simple interactions without needing a central brain. And beneath our feet, in the soil, there are silent engineers constantly reworking Earth's surface. Earthworms. Earthworms seem like simple creatures. They have no eyes, no ears, no limbs. Just long, soft bodies moving slowly through soil. But their impact on ecosystems is enormous. As earthworms eat and move through soil, they create tunnels. These tunnels allow air and water to penetrate deeper into the soil. They improve soil structure, making it more porous and easier for plant roots to penetrate. Earthworms eat organic matter and minerals in the soil, digest them, and excrete worm castings, a form of natural fertilizer extremely rich in nutrients for plants. Charles Darwin, famous for the theory of evolution, spent decades studying earthworms and wrote a book about them. He estimated that earthworms could move tons of soil per acre per year, slowly bringing deep soil to the surface and burying surface objects below. Without earthworms, many ecosystems couldn't function as they do now. They are ecosystem engineers, reshaping the physical environment in ways that benefit countless other organisms. Now let's move to animals, and forms of intelligence closer to ours but still full of surprises. Dolphins have long been known to be intelligent, But in recent decades, we've discovered something amazing. Each dolphin has its own name. More specifically, each dolphin develops a characteristic whistle, signature whistle, that it uses to identify itself. When calling another dolphin, the dolphin will mimic that one's whistle, like how we call each other's names. Hey, John. Dolphins do the same thing, but with underwater sounds. And dolphins can remember these whistles for decades. A dolphin can recognize the whistle of another it hasn't met in over 20 years. They have remarkably long-term social memory. They remember friends, remember enemies, remember individuals who have helped or harmed them. And dolphins aren't alone in having deep emotional memory. Elephants also have this ability. Elephants live in tight-knit social groups, and when a group member dies, the other elephants seem to mourn. They return to where an elephant died, touch the bones with their trunks, stand quietly beside them. Some scientists describe this as something like a memorial ceremony. Elephants can also recognize the bones of dead family members, spending more time examining those bones compared to bones of strange elephants. And there are reports of elephants returning to where a group member died years before, as if visiting a grave. Is this sadness in the way humans understand it? We can't know for certain what elephants are feeling. But clearly, they have a special relationship with death and with lost individuals, something rare in the animal world. Crows and birds in the Corvidae family, including ravens, rooks, and jays, are known to be the most intelligent birds. They can use tools. New Caledonian crows have been observed making and using sticks to hook insects out of tree crevices. They can even bend wire into a hook shape to retrieve food from hard-to-reach places. They can plan for the future. In experiments, crows can choose a tool now that they'll need later, showing they can think about the future and prepare for it, and they hold grudges. Research shows crows can recognize individual human faces. If a person has ever harmed or captured a crow, that crow, and even other crows it talks to, will remember that person's face and call out warnings when seeing that person, sometimes years later. They can even teach their offspring to avoid specific people, passing knowledge across generations. Parrots are also famous for intelligence. African gray parrots, especially, have cognitive abilities at the level of 4 to 5-year-old human children. A famous parrot named Alex, studied by scientist Irene Pepperberg for over 30 years, could recognize colors, shapes, and quantities. It could answer questions about objects, what color, what shape, and give correct answers. Alex could understand the concept of zero, about bigger and smaller, and could even express personal preferences. When tired of tests, it could say, "I want to go back," or "I want something else." And it's not just large, famous animals that are intelligent. Even pigeons, often considered unintelligent birds, have surprising abilities. Pigeons can recognize human faces, distinguish between different paintings, and even learn to categorize objects into abstract categories. In one study, pigeons were trained to distinguish between paintings by Picasso and Monet. And they didn't just memorize specific paintings. They could recognize the style, correctly categorizing new paintings by each artist that they had never seen. Monkeys, our distant cousins, also have behaviors showing intelligence and primitive medical knowledge. Many monkey species have been observed eating specific plants when they're sick. Plants with medicinal properties like antiparasitic or pain relief, but no nutritional value. Chimpanzees in Tanzania eat leaves from certain trees when infected with intestinal parasites. These leaves have chemicals that kill parasites. The monkeys seem to self-medicate with herbal medicine, and this knowledge can be transmitted through culture. Young monkeys learn from older monkeys which plants to eat when sick. And finally, in the animal intelligence section, let's talk about bees. Honeybees, despite having brains the size of a grain of sand, have amazing cognitive abilities. They can learn abstract concepts. In experiments, bees have learned the concepts of same and different, bigger and smaller, and even the concept of zero. Zero is a difficult abstract concept, representing the absence of something. Many human civilizations took thousands of years to develop this concept, but bees can learn it. Bees also learn by observing each other. If one bee sees another solve a problem, such as pulling a string to get food, the first bee can learn and imitate that behavior. This shows a form of social learning, a form of cultural transmission, in a creature with a brain containing only about 1 million neurons, compared to 86 billion in humans. And now, let's move to sensory abilities. Ways of seeing and sensing the world that are completely different from our experience. Snakes, especially pit vipers like rattlesnakes, have a strange ability. They can see temperature. They have special organs called pit organs, usually located between the eyes and nose, that can detect infrared radiation, heat. When a warm-blooded animal passes nearby, the snake can detect heat from its body, creating a thermal image that allows the snake to locate prey in complete darkness. This isn't smell or touch. It's a completely different sense, allowing snakes to see the world by temperature instead of light. Fish have another strange ability. Some species can sleep with half their brain at a time. Dolphins and some bird species also do this. One brain hemisphere sleeps while the other stays awake, allowing the animal to continue swimming, breathing, and watching for danger. After a while, the two hemispheres switch. The half that rested now works. The half that worked now rests. This means the animal is never completely unconscious. Part of the brain is always alert. It's an evolutionary solution to the problem of how to sleep when you need to keep moving or breathe consciously. Migratory birds and sea turtles have another ability. They can sense Earth's magnetic field and use it for navigation. Earth has a magnetic field like a giant magnet, with magnetic field lines running from the North Pole to the South Pole. Some animals can sense these field lines and use them like an internal compass. Baby sea turtles, when hatching on the beach, can orient toward the ocean even in darkness using the magnetic field. And when they mature, they can migrate thousands of kilometers across the ocean and return precisely to the beach where they were born, using an internal magnetic map. Migratory birds also use the magnetic field, combined with other cues like the position of the sun and stars, to navigate on long flights across continents and oceans. How they sense the magnetic field is still not fully understood, but there's evidence they have special proteins in their eyes or beak sensitive to magnetic fields. And finally, many insects and some other animals can see ultraviolet light, UV, a part of the spectrum that human eyes cannot detect. To us, a white flower is just white, but to a bee, that flower may have complex UV patterns, invisible signs to us, but clear to the bee, guiding it to nectar. Some birds can also see UV, allowing them to see patterns on each other's feathers that we cannot see. What looks the same to us may be very different to them. The world these animals experience is very different from ours. They see colors we cannot see, sense forces we cannot sense, perceive temperature as images. Each species lives in its own sensory reality, shaped by its own senses. And all these forms of intelligence and sensation, from the underground communication networks of trees to brainless slime molds solving mazes, to dolphins with their own names, elephants mourning the dead, crows holding grudges, bees understanding zero, snakes seeing heat, birds navigating by magnetic fields, and insects seeing ultraviolet, all remind us that intelligence has many forms. There isn't just one way to think, one way to perceive the world. Life has evolved countless solutions to the problem of how to survive, reproduce, and thrive. And each solution opens a window into a different way of understanding the world, a different way of existing. Earth is full of strange minds thinking, feeling, and understanding in ways we're only beginning to discover. There are nights on certain beaches around the world when something magical happens. When you step into the water in darkness, each footstep creates sparkling blue lights. Each wave of your hand leaves a glowing trail. The seawater turns into a liquid galaxy, glowing an eerie blue in the dark night. This isn't magic. This is bioluminescence, one of the most beautiful and strange phenomena in nature. The light comes from tiny organisms called dinoflagellates, a type of single-celled plankton. When they're disturbed by movement, a fish swimming by, a wave crashing, a human foot touching, they emit a brief blue flash. Each organism produces only a tiny flash, lasting only a fraction of a second. But when millions, billions of them glow simultaneously, the overall effect creates light bright enough to see. How do they create this light? Through a chemical reaction inside the cell. They have an enzyme called luciferase and a substance called luciferin. When these two substances combine with oxygen, they produce light, cold light, producing no heat, nearly 100% efficient. Compare this to an incandescent light bulb, which converts only about 5% of energy into light, the rest into heat. Bioluminescence is one of the most efficient light-producing processes known. But why do plankton do this? It seems to be a defense mechanism. When a small fish tries to eat the plankton glows, attracting the attention of larger predators that might eat the fish. It's like pulling an alarm to call police when being attacked. And bioluminescence isn't limited to plankton. It has evolved independently at least 40 times in the history of life on Earth. In bacteria, fungi, insects, fish, squid, jellyfish, and many other organisms. Each group has developed this ability separately, often using different chemicals and mechanisms for different purposes. Fireflies use light to communicate and attract mates. Each species has its own flashing pattern, a kind of biological Morse code. Some fish species living in deep water have light-emitting organs on their bodies for camouflage. When viewed from below, light from these organs matches the dim light from the surface, making the fish disappear from the view of predators below. Anglerfish have a glowing lantern on their head to attract prey in the darkness of the deep ocean. Prey see the light, swim to investigate, and get swallowed. The vampire squid sprays a cloud of bioluminescent particles when attacked, mesmerizing and blinding the predator while the squid escapes in darkness. And there's a strange fact few people know. The human body also glows. We produce extremely weak bioluminescence, about 1,000 times weaker than what human eyes can detect. This light comes from metabolic reactions in cells, especially from free radicals and oxidation processes. It's not useful or purposeful light, simply a byproduct of living chemistry. But technically, you're glowing right now, just too dim to see. With special, extremely sensitive cameras, scientists have captured this faint aura around the human body. The light fluctuates during the day, strongest in the afternoon, and weakest late at night, following our biological rhythms. So, in a sense, we're all luminescent creatures, just that the light is too weak to see with the naked eye. Now let's move from light to another wonder: the unexpected sophistication of plants. We often think of trees as passive organisms. They stand still in one place. They don't move, don't chase prey, don't run from enemies. They just stand there, green and quiet. But beneath that calm exterior is a world of activity and complexity. Take a leaf as an example. Inside that leaf is a complex transport system, a network of vessels carrying water and nutrients to every cell, and bringing sugar from photosynthesis outward. This network is called the vein system. If you look at a leaf against light, you can see these veins. From the large main vein running down the middle of the leaf to smaller branching veins, and even smaller ones still, forming an intricate network. This structure isn't random. It's been optimized through millions of years of evolution to distribute water and nutrients most efficiently, similar to how the blood vessel system in our bodies is optimized. And some plants have even stranger abilities. The carnivorous Venus flytrap is a famous example. This plant lives in nutrient-poor soil, especially nitrogen deficient. So, it has evolved to supplement its diet by catching and digesting insects. The plant's leaves are shaped like traps, with teeth along the edges. Inside the trap are tiny hairs called trigger hairs. And here's the amazing part: the plant can count. When an insect lands on the trap and touches one hair, the plant doesn't snap the trap immediately. It waits. If a second hair is touched within about 20 seconds, then the trap snaps shut at lightning speed, only about 1/10 of a second. Why count? Because snapping the trap costs energy. If only one touch was needed, the plant might waste energy snapping when a raindrop falls or debris blows in. By requiring two touches, the plant ensures there's something moving inside, likely prey. How does the plant count without a brain? Through electrical signals. When a hair is touched, it generates an electrical pulse like a nerve cell. If a second pulse comes fast enough, the electrical signals accumulate and trigger the trap mechanism. It's a form of short-term memory, a form of information processing happening entirely in a plant without a brain. And scientists recently discovered something even stranger. Some flowers can hear. Evening primrose flowers can detect the sound of bees flying nearby. When the flower hears the frequency of bee flight sounds, it increases the sugar concentration in its nectar within minutes. How does it hear? The petals themselves act as a kind of ear, vibrating in response to sound waves. These vibrations trigger biochemical reactions leading to production of sweeter nectar. Why? To attract bees more effectively. Bees are rewarded with sweeter nectar when they visit, encouraging them to return and pollinate the flower. It's a form of communication between two completely different species, based on sound and reward. And plants can do math. Plants perform photosynthesis during the day, converting sunlight into sugar. But at night, without sunlight, plants must live on sugar reserves from the day. Scientists have discovered that plants perform a complex calculation each night. They estimate how much sugar remains and how many hours until dawn, then distribute that sugar evenly through the night to ensure they don't run out of energy before sunrise. This requires a form of division, remaining sugar divided by remaining time. And plants do this accurately, adjusting the rate of sugar consumption based on both variables. How do they do this without a brain? Through a complex network of chemical reactions functioning as a biological computer, processing information and making decisions. Now, let's move from land down to the sea, where life explodes with amazing abundance and diversity. The ocean covers about 71% of Earth's surface, and it contains most of the planet's biodiversity. When we think about biodiversity, we usually think about the Amazon rainforest or other tropical forests. And those places are truly diverse. But the ocean is far more diverse when counted by total number. While land has about 11 major animal phyla, large groups with different basic body plans, the ocean has over 30 phyla. Some phyla only exist in the sea, with no representatives on land. This means there are body plans, ways of organizing an organism, that exist in the ocean that we don't see anywhere else on the planet. And life in the ocean exists at every scale. A single drop of seawater, just 1 milliliter, can contain 1 million bacteria and 10 million viruses. This isn't polluted or diseased water. This is normal, healthy seawater. These microorganisms are the foundation of the marine food chain. They perform photosynthesis, producing oxygen. In fact, phytoplankton in the ocean produce about 50% of the oxygen we breathe. Every second breath you take comes from the ocean, not from forests. And from these tiny microorganisms, the food chain builds up. Zooplankton eat phytoplankton, small fish eat zooplankton, larger fish eat small fish, and so on up to the largest animals ever to exist on Earth. Blue whales. Blue whales can reach 30 meters long and weigh up to 200 tons, heavier than any dinosaur that ever lived, and they sustain that enormous body mainly by eating krill, tiny creatures only a few centimeters long. The ocean is also home to some of the most ancient creatures still living. Sharks have existed for over 400 million years, longer than trees, which only moved onto land about 350 million years ago. Sharks have survived 4 of the 5 mass extinctions in Earth's history. They were here before dinosaurs, throughout the age of dinosaurs, and after dinosaurs. They've witnessed the rise and fall of countless other species while continuing to exist, adapt, and thrive themselves. And the ocean is home to some of the most amazing sounds in nature. Humpback whales sing, creating complex, repeating songs that can last up to 20 minutes. These songs are transmitted through seawater for hundreds, sometimes thousands of kilometers. And these songs aren't fixed. They change over time. All male whales in an area sing the same song, but that song evolves from year to year, with new phrases added and old ones disappearing. It's a form of culture, a form of tradition, transmitted and changed over time, similar to human music. Why whales sing is still not fully understood. Perhaps to attract mates, perhaps to declare territory, perhaps to communicate with other whales across great distances, or perhaps for reasons we haven't imagined yet. But when you hear a whale sing, those haunting, elongated, emotional sounds, it's hard not to feel this is a creature with a rich inner life, with thoughts and feelings beyond our understanding. And underwater, there are cities built by tiny architects. Coral. Coral looks like rock or plants, but actually they're animals. Tiny creatures called coral polyps related to jellyfish. Each polyp is only a few millimeters in size, but they live in large colonies, each individual secreting a hard calcareous skeleton around itself. Over generations, thousands of years, these skeletons accumulate, forming massive coral structures, coral reefs. The Great Barrier Reef off Australia is the largest coral reef on Earth, stretching over 2,300 kilometers. It's so large it can be seen from space, and this entire massive structure was built by tiny creatures working over thousands of years. Coral reefs are among the most diverse ecosystems on Earth. Though they occupy less than 1% of the ocean area, they're home to about 25% of all marine species. Fish, squid, shrimp, crabs, starfish, sea cucumbers, snails, and countless other creatures live in, on, and around coral. Coral reefs are like underwater cities, full of life, color, and activity. But these cities are in danger. Ocean warming from climate change causes coral bleaching. When water gets too hot, coral expel the symbiotic algae living inside their tissue. These algae provide color and most of the coral's energy. Without them, coral turns white and begins to starve. If conditions don't improve quickly, the coral dies. And when coral dies, the entire ecosystem dependent on it collapses. But even facing these challenges, life in the ocean continues to amaze us with its diversity and adaptability. There are creatures glowing in the darkness of the deep. There are creatures living near hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor, where temperatures approach boiling and there's no sunlight. There are creatures migrating thousands of kilometers across the ocean each year, returning precisely to where they were born. The ocean remains largely unexplored. We've mapped the surface of Mars in more detail than our own ocean floor. There may be millions of species still undiscovered in the depths. And each year, we find new things, unexpected things, new species with new abilities, new behaviors, new ways of living. The ocean is a world within a world, a liquid blue planet covering most of Earth, full of mystery and wonder. Earth hasn't always been like now. This planet has undergone enormous changes, global catastrophes, periods that if we could time travel back to witness, we wouldn't recognize this as the same world. And life, though fragile in many ways, has proven itself amazingly resilient, surviving through it all. Let's go back in time, deep into the past, to a moment about 2.4 billion years ago. At that time, Earth's air was very different from now. There was no free oxygen in the atmosphere, or very little. Instead, the air contained mainly nitrogen, carbon dioxide, methane, and other gases. But then, something changed. A group of bacteria called cyanobacteria evolved the ability to perform photosynthesis in a new way. They used sunlight to convert water and carbon dioxide into sugar, and as a byproduct, they released oxygen. Initially, this oxygen was absorbed by dissolved iron in the ocean, forming oxidized iron deposits, banded iron formations, that we can still see in ancient rock layers today. But gradually, over millions of years, the amount of oxygen produced exceeded the ocean and rock's absorption capacity. Oxygen began accumulating in the atmosphere, and for most life existing at that time, oxygen was poison. Most organisms living then were anaerobic, living in oxygen-free environments. Free oxygen is a strong oxidizer, destroying organic molecules, harming cells. As oxygen levels in the atmosphere rose, it caused a mass extinction event, possibly the first mass extinction in Earth's history. Countless anaerobic species were killed by the very gas we now consider essential for life. This event is called the Great Oxidation Event, or sometimes called the oxygen catastrophe. But from this catastrophe, new opportunity emerged. Some organisms evolved the ability not just to tolerate oxygen, but to use it. Aerobic respiration evolved, allowing organisms to extract far more energy from food than was possible without oxygen. This energy explosion paved the way for the evolution of more complex, larger, faster-moving organisms. Eventually, it led to the evolution of multicellular animals, plants, fungi, and all the diversity of complex life we see today. So every breath you take, every oxygen molecule nourishing your cells is a legacy of an ancient catastrophe, a time when Earth's atmosphere was poisoned by a byproduct of life, killing masses of organisms, but creating conditions for new forms of life to thrive. And the organisms that created that revolution, cyanobacteria, are still here today. You can see traces of them in structures called stromatolites. Stromatolites are layered structures created by bacterial communities, mainly cyanobacteria. The bacteria form a thin mat on the surface of rock or sediment. They trap and bind sediment particles, then grow through that sediment layer and create a new mat. Over time, layer piles upon layer, creating structures that can be meters tall. Stromatolite fossils are some of the earliest evidence of life on Earth, dating back 3.5 billion years. This means life, at least in bacterial form, has existed for most of Earth's 4.5 billion year history. And in some places on Earth, stromatolites are still forming today. At Shark Bay in Western Australia, you can see living stromatolites, looking like round rocks protruding from shallow water. These structures are built by the same type of bacteria as their ancestors 3.5 billion years ago. It's a living window into the ancient past, a reminder that the simplest forms of life can persist for unimaginable time. But where did life begin? How did the first cells appear? A leading hypothesis involves hydrothermal vents on the deep ocean floor. These vents are cracks in Earth's crust where seawater seeps down, gets heated by magma below, and then jets back out, carrying dissolved minerals from deep within the Earth. Water from these vents can be hotter than 400 degrees Celsius, much hotter than water's normal boiling point, but the extreme pressure at that depth prevents it from boiling. Around these vents, in the complete darkness of the deep ocean, far from all sunlight, are ecosystems full of life. Giant tube worms, blind white crabs, strange fish, and countless bacteria. These ecosystems don't depend on photosynthesis. Instead, they rely on chemosynthesis. Bacteria use chemical energy from compounds like hydrogen sulfide in the vent water to make food, just as plants use sunlight. These bacteria form the foundation of the food chain, providing energy for all other organisms in the ecosystem. And some scientists believe environments like this, warm, chemically rich, protected from the harsh UV radiation and meteorites of the surface, may be where life first appeared on Earth. Over 4 billion years ago, in some hydrothermal vent, organic molecules may have gathered, self-organized, and eventually formed the first cell-like structures capable of self-replication. From those humble beginnings, in the darkness and heat of the deep, all life on Earth may have evolved, and life once started has proven itself amazingly resilient. Earth has experienced 5 mass extinctions in the past 500 million years, events in which most species on the planet were killed in a geologically short period. The first mass extinction, at the end of the Ordovician period about 445 million years ago, killed about 85% of species, mainly marine organisms. The cause may have been an ice age combined with sea level changes. The second mass extinction, at the end of the Devonian period about 375 million years ago, wiped out about 75% of species. The cause is uncertain, but may have involved ocean oxygen depletion. The third mass extinction, at the end of the Permian period about 252 million years ago, was the largest. It's called the Great Dying. Over 90% of marine species and 70% of land species were killed. Life was almost completely erased from Earth. The cause may have been massive volcanic eruptions in Siberia, releasing enormous amounts of carbon dioxide and toxic gases, causing extreme global warming and ocean acidification. The fourth mass extinction, at the end of the Triassic period, about 201 million years ago, killed about 80% of species, paving the way for the age of dinosaurs. And the fifth mass extinction, at the end of the Cretaceous period, about 66 million years ago, is the most famous event, the one that killed the dinosaurs except bird ancestors. This was caused by the impact of a massive asteroid on Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, combined with intense volcanic activity in India. 5 times, life on Earth was pushed to the brink of extinction. 5 times, most species were wiped out, but each time, life came back. After each mass extinction, the surviving species, usually small, adaptable ones capable of living in harsh conditions, began diversifying and filling the empty ecological niches. After the Permian extinction, it took tens of millions of years for life to fully recover, but eventually it did. Dinosaurs evolved and dominated. After the Cretaceous extinction, mammals, small creatures that had lived in the shadow of dinosaurs for over 100 million years, suddenly had opportunity. They diversified rapidly, evolving into all the forms we see today, from mice to whales to elephants to humans. Life always finds a way. It bends but doesn't break. It gets pushed back but is never completely destroyed. And there are some organisms that could survive even through a global extinction event far worse than any in the past. We talked about tardigrades, water bears, in an earlier section. These tiny creatures can endure extreme conditions, space vacuum, enormous pressure, extremely cold and hot temperatures, high radiation. Scientists have modeled what kinds of events could kill all tardigrades on Earth. They considered scenarios like asteroid impacts, nearby supernova explosions, and gamma-ray bursts. The conclusion? Tardigrades are extremely hard to kill. They could survive most imaginable cosmic catastrophes. Only an event that could boil the entire ocean, which would require an asteroid impact far larger than anything that's happened in the past 4 billion years, could kill all tardigrades. So as long as there's liquid water somewhere on Earth, tardigrades will likely survive. They're a nearly indestructible form of life. And if tardigrades can survive, even more resilient bacterial life forms certainly can. Life on Earth, in general, is very hard to completely extinguish. Now let's move from tiny creatures that can survive apocalypse to massive organisms that have lived for unbelievably long times. In Utah, USA, there's an aspen grove that looks like many separate trees, but actually, they're all one single tree. This grove is called Pando, from Latin meaning "I spread." It consists of about 47,000 individual stems, all connected by a massive underground root system. Each stem is an identical genetic copy, a clone. They grow from roots, not from seeds, and all share the same root system. Pando weighs an estimated 6,000 tons, making it one of the heaviest known organisms, and its age is estimated at about 80,000 years. 80,000 years. This root system has existed since before the last ice age, It was there when modern humans first migrated out of Africa. It has witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Individual stems live and die. Each stem lives only a few hundred years, but the root system continues, constantly sending up new stems, maintaining the organism for tens of thousands of years. And there's another organism, even larger and possibly older, hiding underground. In Oregon, USA, there's an Armillaria ostoyae fungus, also called honey fungus, spreading over about 965 hectares, nearly 10 square kilometers. Most of this fungus is invisible. It exists as a massive network of mycelium, fungal threads, spreading through soil and dead wood, a few centimeters below the surface. Occasionally, the fungus produces reproductive bodies, what we call mushrooms, on the surface, but that's only a small part of the organism. Most of its mass lies underground, unseen. This Armillaria fungus is estimated to weigh hundreds or even thousands of tons, and may be 2,400 to 8,650 years old, though some estimates suggest it could be much older. It's a massive, quiet, hidden organism that has silently spread through the forest for thousands of years, larger than any animal that has ever existed. These organisms, Pando at 80,000 years, Armillaria fungus at thousands of years, remind us that lifespan isn't just measured by heartbeats or breaths. Some forms of life operate on completely different timescales, measured in millennia instead of years, and Earth itself has changed in dramatic ways over that time. Think about the Sahara Desert, a dry, hot wasteland that seems lifeless. It's the largest hot desert on Earth, spreading across most of North Africa. But the Sahara wasn't always a desert. About 10,000 years ago, the Sahara was a green land. There were large lakes, rivers, grasslands, and forests. There were hippos, crocodiles, elephants, giraffes. There were people living there, hunting and herding. Rock art from that period shows drawings of domesticated animals, boats on rivers, and hunting scenes in a rich environment. What happened? The climate changed. Earth goes through climate cycles due to small changes in the planet's orbit and tilt. These changes affect how much sunlight different regions receive, altering weather patterns. About 5,000 to 6,000 years ago, the African monsoon weakened and shifted southward. The Sahara began drying out, lakes evaporated, vegetation died, and within a few thousand years, a green land transformed into the vast desert we know today. This process could reverse. In the future, if climate conditions change again, the Sahara could become green again. And in fact, there's evidence the Sahara has oscillated between desert and grassland many times in the past, in cycles of about 20,000 years. Earth is a dynamic planet. Continents drift, climates change, seas rise and fall, volcanoes erupt, meteorites collide, and through all these changes, life persists. It adapts, it evolves, it survives. From the first bacteria 3.5 billion years ago, through the oxidation catastrophe, through 5 mass extinctions, through the formation and disappearance of oceans and deserts, life has always found a way to continue. We, all of us, every living creature on this planet today, are descendants of survivors. We carry in our genes the legacy of billions of years of resilience, adaptation, and persistence. Every cell in your body contains DNA that has been passed from generation to generation, unbroken, for 3.5 billion years. Never in all that time did an ancestor of yours die before reproducing. The lineage was never broken. You are part of that long and incredible story, the story of life on Earth. The body, whether of animals or ours, is a biological marvel. Each organism is a collection of evolutionary solutions to the challenges of life, and some of those solutions are truly extraordinary. Let's start with a creature that seems to have found the secret to eternal youth: the naked mole rat. Naked mole rats aren't beautiful creatures. They're tiny, hairless, with wrinkled pink skin, protruding teeth, and live in dark tunnels underground in East Africa. They look like little sausages with legs and teeth. But don't let appearances fool you. These creatures have some of the most amazing biological characteristics in the mammal world. First, they almost don't age. Most mammals have a mortality curve that increases with age. As they get older, the chance of dying each year increases exponentially. An old mouse has a much higher chance of dying than a young mouse. But naked mole rats don't follow this rule. Their chance of dying doesn't increase significantly as they age. A 20-year-old naked mole rat has the same chance of dying as a 2-year-old. They can live over 30 years, a record lifespan for a rodent that size. Most mouse species only live 2 to 3 years, and throughout that long life, naked mole rats maintain good health. They rarely develop cancer, despite living long. Their immune systems remain strong. They show no signs of age-related diseases we see in other mammals. How do they do this? Scientists are still studying, but it seems they have some special protective mechanisms against oxidative stress and DNA damage. They also have special proteins that help maintain protein function even when damaged. Understanding how naked mole rats avoid aging could help us develop therapies for age-related diseases in humans. Now, let's move to a completely different environment: the desert. Camels are the symbol of desert adaptation, and their ability to withstand thirst is truly extraordinary. A camel can live for weeks, even months, without drinking water, depending on temperature and activity level. In cool weather, they can go up to 6 months without drinking. How? Many adaptations work together. First, camels can tolerate extreme water loss. Most mammals, including humans, can die if they lose 15% of body water. But camels can lose up to 25% of body water and still survive. When they lose water, it comes from tissues and spaces between cells, not from blood. This means their blood still flows freely, doesn't become thick, even when their body is severely dehydrated. Camel red blood cells are oval-shaped instead of round, allowing them to continue flowing through blood vessels even when blood is thicker than normal. And when camels finally find water, they can drink an enormous amount very quickly, up to 100 liters in 10 minutes, without problems. Most other animals would suffer water intoxication or red blood cell rupture if they drank that fast. But camels have special mechanisms to handle the sudden water increase. Their hump tissue, often mistakenly thought to contain water, actually contains fat. But this fat still helps conserve water. By concentrating fat in one place, the hump, instead of distributed under the skin, camels can cool the rest of their body more efficiently, reducing water loss through sweating. And camels have a series of other adaptations. A nose that can recapture moisture from exhaled breath. Extremely efficient kidneys that reabsorb water. The ability to let body temperature fluctuate widely to reduce sweating. All these adaptations combined create a creature that can survive in one of Earth's harshest environments. And speaking of environmental adaptation, there's a fish species that has evolved the ability to do what most fish cannot: walk on land. Walking catfish and mudskippers can leave water and move on land for hours or even days. Walking catfish use spiny pectoral fins to push themselves forward on land like crutches. They have a special respiratory organ allowing air breathing. When their pond or river dries up, they can walk to another water source, sometimes traveling a considerable distance. Mudskippers are even more adapted. They spend most of their time on mud flats, hopping and climbing on roots. They breathe through their skin and by keeping water in their gill chambers. Their eyes protrude high on their head and can rotate independently, allowing them to watch for danger while most of their body is buried in mud. These are fish in the middle of an evolutionary stage between living completely underwater and living on land, a glimpse into the type of evolutionary process that ancestors of all four-legged animals, including us, went through hundreds of millions of years ago. And in the Arctic foxes have a beautiful and practical adaptation. They completely change their fur color with the seasons. In winter, Arctic foxes have thick, pure white or pale blue fur, blending perfectly with snow and ice. But when spring comes and snow melts, they molt. Their summer fur is brown or gray, matching the rock and vegetation of the summer tundra. This process isn't just a color change. Winter fur is much thicker, providing better insulation. Summer fur is thinner, shorter, suitable for warmer weather. Their entire body regenerates its outer covering twice each year, changing not just color, but texture and thickness to perfectly adapt to the changing environment. And some bird species have an ability that seems impossible: sleeping while flying. Frigate birds can fly continuously for weeks or even months over the ocean. They eat flying fish and squid caught from the water surface, and they don't have good waterproof feathers, so they avoid landing on water if possible. So, when do they sleep? Scientists attached brainwave measuring devices to frigate birds and discovered they sleep while flying, but only in short intervals, each lasting a few seconds to a few minutes. And like dolphins, they can sleep with half their brain at a time, keeping the other half awake to control flight and watch for danger. In total, they only sleep about 40 minutes each day when flying over the ocean, much less than when they're on land. But apparently, that's enough to sustain them. And some animal behaviors are simply irresistibly adorable. Gentoo and Adelie penguins have a courtship ritual. The male finds the most perfect pebble, smooth, round, beautiful by penguin standards, and presents it to the female he wants to mate with. If the female accepts the pebble, placing it in her nest, It's a sign of accepting the proposal. The pair will then use this pebble and many others to build a nest for their eggs. This isn't just sweet behavior, it's practical. A well-built nest with good pebbles helps keep eggs from getting cold and wet, increasing survival chances for chicks. But there's still something lovely about thinking that penguins propose with pebbles. And finally, in the animal section, let's talk about sloths. Sloths move so incredibly slowly, averaging about 4 meters per minute on the ground and not much faster in trees. They're the slowest mammals on Earth. But this slowness isn't a disadvantage. It's a survival strategy. By moving slowly, sloths expend very little energy. They have extremely low metabolism, half what you'd expect from a mammal that size. And moving slowly makes them nearly invisible to predators. Predators usually detect prey through movement. A fast-moving animal attracts attention, but sloths move so slowly they blend into the forest. Sloth fur even grows algae, giving it a light greenish color, helping camouflage in the forest canopy. Sloths descend to the ground only once a week to defecate. One of the mysteries of sloth biology, because this behavior makes them vulnerable. But besides that, they spend almost their entire lives hanging upside down in trees, moving through the canopy at a glacial pace, eating leaves, and disappearing into the green. Now, let's return to us, to the human body. Your body is a small universe, a complex ecosystem, a biological marvel, no less impressive than any creature we've discussed. Let's start with numbers. You're made of about 30 trillion cells. 30 trillion. Each cell is a living unit with membrane, cytoplasm, DNA, and thousands of proteins working together to maintain life. And these cells constantly die and get replaced. Skin cells live about 2 to 3 weeks before being replaced. Intestinal lining cells only live a few days. Red blood cells live about 120 days. Some cells live longer. Brain cells and heart cells can last a lifetime, though components inside them are still regenerated. But overall, your body is constantly regenerating itself. Every second, about 25 million cells in your body are dividing. Every day, about 330 billion cells are replaced. Within a few years, most atoms in your body have been replaced. You're no longer the same collection of physical matter as you were a few years ago, but you're still you. Because what makes you isn't the specific atoms, but the pattern, the structure, the information. And there's another amazing fact. The number of human cells in your body isn't the largest number of cells. Your body is home to about 38 trillion bacteria, more than your human cells. These bacteria, along with viruses, fungi, and other microorganisms, make up your microbiome. They live mainly in the gut, but also on skin, in the mouth, and in other organs. And these aren't bad disease-causing organisms. Most are beneficial or neutral symbionts. Gut bacteria help digest food, synthesize vitamins, train the immune system, and even influence mood and behavior through the gut-brain axis. Without the microbiome, you couldn't live healthily. You're not a single organism, but an ecosystem, a community of trillions of organisms working together. And there's another strange thing hidden in your DNA. About 8% of the human genome is ancient viral DNA, genetic code fragments left by viruses that infected our ancestors millions of years ago. These viruses, called endogenous retroviruses, inserted their DNA into our ancestors' genomes. Most are now inactive, just junk DNA, but some have been repurposed for useful functions. For example, an ancient viral protein now plays a crucial role in forming the placenta during pregnancy, allowing mother and fetus to exchange nutrients without the mother's immune system attacking the fetus. So, you carry within you the legacy of ancient viruses that infected your ancestors. Part of you, literally, is virus. And your brain, the central processor of all your experience, works through a miraculous process: bioelectrical impulses. The brain contains about 86 billion neurons. Each neuron can connect with thousands of other neurons through synapses. When a neuron fires, sends a signal, it does so through an electrical pulse called an action potential. The voltage across the cell membrane rapidly reverses, creating an electrical wave traveling along the neuron at speeds up to 100 meters per second. When the electrical pulse reaches the neuron's end, it triggers the release of neurotransmitters, tiny chemicals that cross the gap between neurons and activate or inhibit the next neuron. All your thoughts, feelings, memories, and actions are the result of complex patterns of millions of neurons firing in intricate sequences and networks. Your consciousness, the sense of I, emerges from this electrochemical firestorm in the brain. How this happens remains one of science's greatest mysteries. And finally, as we mentioned in an earlier section, you glow. The human body produces extremely weak bioluminescence, mainly from metabolic reactions involving free radicals. This light is strongest around the mouth, neck, and cheeks in the afternoon. It's too weak to see with the naked eye, about 1,000 times weaker than the visible threshold. But with a sensitive enough camera, this aura can be detected. So you really are a luminescent creature, though dim, emitting cold light from the chemical reactions of life. Your body is a small universe, 30 trillion cells working in harmony, 38 trillion bacteria living symbiotically, DNA containing the history of 3.5 billion years of evolution, and the legacy of ancient viruses. A brain with 86 billion neurons creating the electrochemical firestorm of consciousness. And all this is happening right now, while you lie here, breathing slowly, relaxing into sleep. There's a way to view Earth not as a planet with life on it, but as one giant living organism, a single, self-regulating system where every part is connected to every other part. Earth breathes, not literally as we breathe, but through massive cycles of carbon, oxygen, and water moving between atmosphere, ocean, land, and living organisms. Let's start with the carbon cycle, one of the planet's most fundamental breaths. Every spring and summer in the northern hemisphere, when trees and plants grow, they absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere through photosynthesis. Billions of tons of carbon are pulled from the air and converted into leaves, wood, roots, and other plant tissues. If you measure carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere over time, you see it decrease throughout the northern hemisphere's growing season. Earth is inhaling, absorbing carbon. Then, in fall and winter, when leaves fall and plants die, bacteria and fungi decompose organic matter, releasing carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. Earth exhales. You can see this breath clearly in data from measurement stations around the world. The Keeling curve, a graph of carbon dioxide concentration over time collected from Mauna Loa, Hawaii since 1958, shows a distinct seasonal oscillation superimposed on the long-term upward trend. Each year, carbon dioxide rises in northern hemisphere winter and falls in summer. Earth breathes in, breathes out, breathes in, breathes out, to the rhythm of the seasons. And this breath isn't just a passive phenomenon. It maintains climate. It regulates temperature. It connects the biosphere with the atmosphere in a continuous cycle. Over millions of years, the carbon cycle has kept Earth within a relatively stable temperature range, allowing life to thrive. When carbon dioxide levels get too high, chemical weathering and photosynthesizing organisms intensify, pulling carbon from the atmosphere. When carbon levels get too low, volcanoes release more carbon from the Earth's interior. It's a self-regulating feedback system, a form of dynamic equilibrium that has kept the planet livable for billions of years. And tropical rainforests, especially the Amazon, play a critical role in this system, not just by absorbing carbon, but by creating their own weather. The Amazon rainforest doesn't just receive rain, it creates rain. Billions of trees in the Amazon constantly evaporate water through their leaves in a process called transpiration. Each large tree can release hundreds of liters of water per day into the atmosphere. Multiplied by billions of trees, this water forms invisible rivers in the air, streams of water vapor moving through the atmosphere. This vapor condenses into clouds. Clouds create rain. Rain falls on the forest, is absorbed by trees, and then released back into the atmosphere, forming a cycle. But it's not a closed cycle. Some of the water vapor moves westward, bringing rain deep into the South American interior, to regions that might be arid without the rainforest. Scientists estimate the Amazon rainforest recycles about 50 to 75% of the rain it receives. This means the forest is self-sustaining, creating much of its own humid climate. And there's another interesting mechanism. Trees release volatile organic compounds, VOCs, into the air. These compounds act as condensation nuclei, tiny surfaces that water vapor can condense around, helping form clouds. Essentially, trees are creating cloud seeds, promoting cloud and rain formation above them. So forests don't just passively receive weather, they actively create their own weather, regulating local and regional climate. And this leads to an important realization. If you destroy forest, you don't just lose trees, you lose rain. When large areas of Amazon forest are cleared, local climate changes. Less water vapor is released into the atmosphere. Fewer clouds form. Rain decreases. And this rain reduction doesn't just affect the deforested area. It affects regions farther west, including important agricultural areas in Brazil, Bolivia, Paraguay, and Argentina. There's evidence that deforestation is reducing rainfall over a vast area, affecting agriculture, water supplies, and even hydroelectric power production. Forest and rain are connected in a feedback loop. Forest creates rain. Rain sustains forest. Break one part of the cycle, and the entire system can collapse. This is an example of what ecologists call a tipping point. If too much Amazon rainforest is destroyed, it may reach a threshold beyond which, even if clearing stops, the forest can't recover itself. The climate has become too dry. The forest transforms into savanna, grassland with scattered trees. Some scientists worry we're approaching that threshold. About 17% of the Amazon forest has been lost, and some estimates suggest the tipping point may be around 20 to 25%. This isn't just a local issue. The Amazon stores enormous amounts of carbon. If it transforms from forest to savanna, that carbon will be released into the atmosphere, accelerating global climate change. And this change would affect weather patterns across the planet. The Amazon isn't just important for South America. It's a crucial part of the global climate system. But connections in nature aren't just about trees and rain. They're also about animals and how they shape landscapes. There's a famous story in ecology about wolves and Yellowstone National Park in the United States. In the early 20th century, wolves were hunted to extinction in Yellowstone. Removing this top predator seemed like a good thing for prey species like elk. And indeed, elk numbers increased. But with many elk and no wolves to control them, elk began overgrazing. They spent much time in valleys and near rivers, where there were tender, tasty willow and young aspen saplings. Elk ate most of these saplings, preventing them from growing into mature trees. Over time, willows and aspens along streams disappeared. Riverbanks became bare. Without tree roots to hold soil, riverbanks began eroding. Rivers widened and became shallower. They warmed in summer because there was no tree shade. This affected trout and other fish species. Beavers, dependent on fish, declined in number. Songbirds, needing shrubs and small trees for nesting, also declined. The entire ecosystem changed because of the absence of one species, wolves. Then, in 1995, wolves were reintroduced to Yellowstone. And something amazing happened. Elk began changing behavior. With wolves hunting them, elk no longer stayed in valleys and riverbanks, places where they were vulnerable to attack. They moved more, were more vigilant. This gave willows and aspens a chance to recover. Within a few years, young forests began growing back along streams. With trees returning, beavers returned. They used branches to build dams. Dams created ponds and wetlands, providing habitat for many other species. Frogs, fish, water birds, insects. Songbirds returned, nesting in recovering shrubs. Ravens and eagles came to eat carcasses that wolves left. Bears had more berries to eat from recovering shrubs. And as trees returned, their roots stabilized riverbanks. Rivers narrowed and deepened. Erosion decreased. Water quality improved. Wolves had changed not just the organisms in the park, but the physical geography. They had changed the behavior of rivers. This is an example of what's called a trophic cascade. A change at the top of the food chain ripples down through all other levels, changing the entire ecosystem. And it shows that every species is connected. Remove one piece, and the whole system can change in unpredictable ways. In the sea, a similar phenomenon happens with coral reefs. Coral reefs, as we discussed, are among the most diverse ecosystems on Earth. They're sometimes called rainforests of the sea because of their high density of life. But coral reefs don't just provide habitat. They protect coastlines. They reduce wave energy, protecting coastal areas from erosion and storms. When coral reefs are healthy, they function as a natural wave barrier. Waves break on the reef, their energy absorbed, before reaching shore. This protects beaches, mangroves, and coastal communities. But when coral dies, from bleaching, pollution, or other factors, the reef loses structure. It begins eroding. Waves are no longer slowed down. Coastlines become more vulnerable. Erosion increases. In storms, larger waves hit land, causing more damage. And losing coral reefs means losing fish stocks. Millions of people, especially in tropical island nations, depend on fish from coral reefs for protein and livelihood. Losing reefs means losing food, losing income, and losing protection from storms, all from the loss of one ecosystem. Once again, we see how everything is connected. Coral affects fish. Fish affect people. Reefs affect waves. Waves affect coastlines. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything is part of a larger system. And at the largest scale, the entire Earth functions as a single system. The Gaia hypothesis, proposed by scientist James Lovelock in the 1970s, suggests Earth functions as a single self-regulating organism. The biosphere, atmosphere, hydrosphere, and lithosphere interact in ways that maintain conditions suitable for life. Not that Earth is conscious or has purpose, but through countless feedback loops, like how the carbon cycle regulates climate, the system stabilizes itself. For example, when the planet warms, chemical weathering of rocks intensifies, pulling more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, cooling the planet. When the planet cools, weathering slows, carbon dioxide accumulates from volcanoes, and the planet warms. When the ocean becomes too acidic, shell-forming organisms weaken, releasing less carbon to the sea floor, allowing the atmosphere to hold more carbon and adjust the pH. These are not perfect or fast mechanisms. They operate on timescales of thousands or millions of years. But they have kept Earth habitable for billions of years through all kinds of changes: the brightening sun, drifting continents, evolving life. And life itself is an essential part of these regulating mechanisms. Trees influence the climate. Plankton affects the composition of the atmosphere. Bacteria regulate nutrient cycles. Life doesn't just adapt to the planet. It shapes the planet. It creates its own environment. The air we breathe, rich in oxygen, is a product of life of billions of years of photosynthesis. The saltiness of the sea, the pH of the oceans, the composition of the soil. All of these are profoundly influenced by the activity of living organisms. Earth is not just a rock with life on it. It is a living system, where biology and geology are interwoven in ways that cannot be separated, and we humans are a part of that system. For most of human history, our impact on the Earth system was small. We were just one species among millions, influencing local environments, but not the global one. But in the past few centuries, especially the past few decades, that has changed. We have become a geological force. We are altering the climate, the composition of the atmosphere, the chemistry of the oceans, the nitrogen cycle, and the distribution of species. We are affecting the Earth system on a global scale. And because everything is connected, the changes we make ripple through the system in complex, sometimes unpredictable ways. We alter the climate. That changes rain patterns. That affects forests. That affects the carbon cycle, which in turn loops back to influence the climate. Feedback loops overlap and interact in ways we are only beginning to understand. But recognizing that everything is connected brings hope. It means that when we protect a forest, we are not just saving trees. We are protecting rain, rivers, soil, and the countless species that depend on the forest. When we restore a coral reef, we are not just helping the corals. We are supporting fish, shielding coastlines, and sustaining livelihoods for communities. When we reintroduce a lost species, like wolves in Yellowstone, entire ecosystems can begin to heal. Earth is a resilient system. It has recovered from past catastrophes. It has the ability to heal if we give it the chance, but resilience has limits. Push a system too far, and it may cross a tipping point, shifting into a new, stable state, one that might not be favorable for us or for many existing species. The challenge of this century is to learn how to live as part of the Earth system, not as an external force disrupting it. To learn to work with natural cycles instead of against them. To protect the ecosystems that create climate, purify water, and sustain life. To recognize that the health of the planet and our own health are inseparable. We breathe the air that trees and plankton create. We drink water filtered by forests and soil. We eat food provided by Earth, pollinating bees, and a stable climate. Across billions of years, through unimaginable disasters, through dark ages and bursts of flourishing life, Earth and the life upon it have always found a way to continue. Life is resilient. It adapts. It recovers. It regenerates. And we are a part of it, an essential, inseparable part. Every cell in our bodies carries DNA passed down without interruption for 3.5 billion years, from the first cells in the ancient ocean to us right now. Every breath we take contains oxygen created by photosynthesis, the legacy of billions of years of trees and plankton working to reshape the atmosphere. Every atom in our bodies, the carbon in our bones, the nitrogen in our proteins, the iron in our blood has circulated through the biosphere for billions of years, being part of rock, then tree, then animal, then soil, and then us. Each day, billions of cells in our bodies die and are replaced. We are constantly recreating ourselves. We are a process, not a static object. A flow, a pattern sustained through time. And every night, when we sleep, our bodies repair themselves. Cells are replaced, tissues heal, memories consolidate, energy is restored. Sleep is a small form of regeneration, a small death, and a rebirth each morning. So let sleep come. Let your body do its healing work. Let your mind rest, knowing that all these wonders, all the secrets of earth, all the diversity of life, all the deep history and resilience will still be here when you wake. The forests will still whisper through their underground fungal networks. The ocean will still shimmer with glowing plankton. The trees will still breathe, creating the oxygen for our breath. The ancient cycles will continue, and we will still be part of all of it, a single thread in the vast tapestry of life on earth. Take one last deep breath. Feel the cool air entering. And exhale slowly, letting every last tension fade away. Let your eyelids grow heavy. Let your body sink deeper. Let your mind drift like a leaf on a stream, gentle, ungrasping, simply letting go. Sleep well. Let Earth hold us, as it has held all life for billions of years. See you again in the next science story.